or die, comply or die, comply.
Welcome to GRC Uncensored, a new podcast designed to elevate real conversations with GRC professionals, auditors, regulators, and those building programs around it. Your hosts Troy Fine and Kendra Cooley, alongside producer Elliot Volkman, guide unfiltered discussions that dig into the reality of how governance, risk, and compliance function, rather than the rose-colored perspective that's fueled by millions in marketing spend. Now, onto your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to GRC Uncensored. I am your producer, Elliot, alongside our wonderful host, Mr. TJ or Troy Fine, and Kendra. Today, we're going to be talking about multiple subjects, for which I'm just going to jump right over to our guest and we'll kind of navigate that journey together. And for that journey, we're going to be chatting with Richa to talk a little bit about a few different topics that I think we've spread across this series so far. So Richa is the CEO and founder of Compliance, or Compliance with a Y, but has been in some other key executive roles in the past, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit too. So Richa, now that I hopefully have stopped butchering your name, which I will gladly edit out so the people listening don't know how many times it took to get to this point, maybe you can expand upon what your company does.
Sure. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Troy and Kendra, for having me today. So Compliance with a Y, bit of a play on words there, is focused on helping mid-market to smaller enterprise GRC teams use tailored automation to manage their GRC workflows. We use custom integrations, custom AI, and a lot of no-code configurability to focus on really meeting the clients where they're at and helping automate and manage all of their different compliance and information security needs.
All right. So before Troy asks his question that I know he wants to ask, maybe we can throw out a little bit of a differentiator there. We've chatted about a lot of software-related companies that are tied to compliance and GRC. We have also very kindly ragged on organizations who have benefited or increased the issues with commoditization of compliance. How does your organization sort of differ from that? Namely, SOC 2 in a box? What are your thoughts?
Great question. We are very far from SOC in a box, and I want to just actually go over a little bit of the ethos of the company, perhaps, and maybe why we even exist. So when I was managing compliance in my last role, I was looking for a way to actually respect the nuance and the spirit of SOC 2, because there were certain controls that mattered more to me, certain things that I knew, were not as important for a younger company that, I was at. And I wanted to have a more tailored experience. And I couldn't find a tool to give me a tailored experience. I could only find SOC in a box. And I actually ended up using Excel plus spending a lot of money on a consulting service to have a more tailored approach to SOC 2. And that took me a lot of work to even get to that point. And why did I care so much? Is because to me, I wanted the peace of mind behind the SOC 2 and not just the piece of paper, because I knew that it was going to be on me if something happened. And going through that process a couple years in a row and seeing that the consultant I was working with was great, but was at the end of the day sort of a very external resource. I wanted something internal. And so created Compliance with a Y to get to the whys behind your compliance. And so when we talk about SOC in a box, there is a market for that. And I think that, folks who are seeking the SOC in a box tech have reasons to do so. I have a lot of respect for those players and what they've done to raise the minimum standards of security in the space. But that's not who we are. If a client comes to us and they're looking for SOC 2 for the first time, it's actually not our client. And we very often tell them, hey, come back to us when you're a little bit more mature. Here's who we can recommend for your first time around. But when you're ready to go in and really think about the whys behind compliance and practice good security, we have configurable controls, we have custom integrations, we have custom AI, and we're here for you. And so that's, I guess, why we are not SOC in a box.
Amazing. So you could probably say compliance and GRC in general is not one size fits all when it comes to technology.
No. And I do think you guys talk a lot on this podcast about like marketing dollars and the different kind of forces that are coming into GRC tech through VCs, through, huge rounds of funding, through huge market pressures, through so on and so on. And I think that when it comes to kind of this space, there's just been a lot of, I guess, exposure for the few players who are putting a lot of marketing dollars in. But those few players are very focused on a primary customer base of startups. And we've had this weird thing in the last few years where we really talk about them, but that doesn't paint the picture of what's happening in the space. Those folks are not working with bigger mid-market and enterprise clients. And if they are, it may not be the best fit from a product and tech perspective. So that's me on my soapbox. But I think there's room for all different types of players in the space, and the conversation should be had at a segment level.
All right. Troy, you want to throw out the question before we get into it?
We'll save my question till the end, but I was actually going to ask where your rooster is. Where's the rooster, Elliot? Not for... That's what I was going to ask. But
yeah, Richa, that
I've already ruined our poor guest name 30 times, and now
question.
You want to interrupt it with the rooster?
That's okay. I have a real...
You did promise.
All right.
We'll get it. By the end, you need to bring the rooster on. Just get up and go. But I do have a real question. How do you feel about tariffs? No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God. Delete.
Can I tell you something, actually, Troy? While we're on this topic, were any of you, you guys all, well, you're not necessarily all in tech, but you've been in tech, right? And I'm like a business owner this weekend, frantically just confirming tariffs do not apply to software, just making triple sure. And then I read about the EU thinking about putting tariffs on software coming out of the US. Okay. It's just it's genuinely quite an interesting conversation, but maybe not one for this.
No, that was more of a joke, but that's an interesting thing I just figured tariffs would be good for our SEO, Elliot, so I want the word in there.
You'll also attract a few different crowds that we are not ready for.
No, I was going to ask, what do you think mid-market companies are looking for in GRC software that they're not getting from some of these sock-in-a-box tools?
So I think that what happens is that mid-market companies, sometimes they're using sock-in-a-box tools, but more often they're actually using Excel, which is such an interesting kind of, differentiator automatically from some of the startups and some of the bigger companies who are using more legacy tech. So I think mid-market companies are really looking for a way to have tailored automation. Because I think when they look at some of the sock-in-a-box tools, they see cookie-cutter approaches to everything from evidence to control sets. And that is really anti the way that they think and the way that they do work. And they often have unified controls frameworks or internal controls frameworks that are not suited for sock-in-a-box tools. Again, those tools have their place. That place is just a little bit of a different target market. And so I think what they're looking for is they're kind of saying, look, we're really overstretched. Like we have almost the level of, GRC needs as an enterprise, and we have probably 10, 20% of their resources. We need automation that works for our company. And if they don't find it, they would rather use Excel than try to invest a bunch of money in a tool that doesn't work for them. And so they're using Excel, or they're using retrofitted tools like Airtable or something like that, which are not actually meant for GRC. And they're kind of like getting through. I just want to say these mid-market GRC practitioners are awesome. They have figured out, they are so innovative. They have figured out how to make Airtable work for them, or how to make, I don't even know, self-coded internal tools work for them. And I think they feel relief when they see tailored automation.
See that? So do you have a lot of customers that are kind of moving from that sock-in-a-box world into more of your framework or your product for compliance? Or what does that switch look based on your experience?
Yeah, great question, Kendra. Yes, so what we'll see is that clients who use sock-in-a-box tools usually have a couple standards, let's say SOC 2 and ISO 27001, going in their sock-in-a-box tool. And then they have an Excel sheet or some sneaky outside of platform use case that starts to creep up on them. Maybe it's an internal controls framework, maybe it's their risk register, maybe it's their questionnaire process. Some stuff starts to happen outside the tool because the tool can no longer handle what they need. And now they're kind of managing both. And then we know that they're ready for us. And that's the perfect transition point. So that's the story we typically see. We come in and we kind of welcome them with open arms, get all their controls in the environment, get the risk register in with custom fields, do that kind of stuff, and then they're a platform.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm smiling kind of sneakily because it just resonates so well with me right now. But, typically I think a lot of the draw for the sock in a box platforms has been for those small startups. They don't have dedicated security teams that are able to focus on this or, put a lot of time into it. It's really, all right, how quick can we get through this? And we've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast, that it sounds a little bit like from your company's perspective, you're kind of waiting in the background, waiting for them to establish a little bit more of an actual security or compliance function before it makes sense to make that jump. Does that sound about right?
It does. The only exceptions I would say is that there are some clients that we have that have invested really early in more mature, tailored GRC approaches. And those folks are a good fit. So it's kind of like our name, Compliance with the Y, is almost a good filter for who's a good client for us. If they care about the piece of paper, then they're not honestly a good fit. But if they're a startup, but they care about the whys behind compliance for peace of mind rather than a piece of paper, then they are a good fit. So one of our very vocal clients is the CISO of Query AI. And again, they're a startup, but they have a CISO. So that tells you a lot. That means that they're probably care. And so they're, a great client of ours, even though they're a younger company.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of these like sock in a box platforms too have those partnerships built in with audit firms. How does compliance approach that?
I could talk about this for a long time.
Us too.
Well, I've heard it. So, not to be very extreme, but here's what I would say. I don't believe in the approach of bundling your audit with your software as a cost base. I don't believe in that. And we do not do that. We simply don't do it. We've lost deals because of it. I'm able to hold my head high and walk away and say, that's okay. That wasn't our client. We have partners who are audit firms who we absolutely recommend. And we have tiers of partners. I mean, we all know, I know you all know, there are different tiers of audit firms developing in the market. Some are the lower cost firms, some are the higher cost firms, and some who are emerging now are more trying to balance cost with good quality. We have partners at every level, and we're pretty transparent with our clients about who is who and what is what. And then we leave them to make an informed choice on their own. We do not say, hey, let's bundle this together at a rate of $5K. Oh, you can't pay $5K? Fine, we'll do $3K, and later we'll squeeze the auditor in the back. That's not what we do here. It's tough when you're growing a business and there's easy revenue available to you, and you have to make a really tough choice and say, no to that. And it's not as easy as it sounds. When you're trying to grow a business, it's hard. And I felt that so much. I really, really felt that because it is hard. Just going to go into a little bit of a personal story, which I hope is okay to share on this, is that when I was first building the company, people were coming to me to give money. Like I didn't actually want to raise around, and as Troy knows, kind of ended up doing it anyway. And there was this investor who gave me the first term sheet that we got at Compliance. And he said, I want you to build the Vanta of Europe. And he was dangling millions of dollars in front of me. And he was like, I want you to build the Vanta of Europe. Like, they're not in the European market yet. They're going to go in, do it. I was just like, I can't do it. I literally cannot do it. Did you read the pitch deck? It said configurable compliance for the mid-market and enterprise. And he was like, this is the prerequisite. I was like, okay, well, I have to humbly decline. And I walked away from that like very sure thing. And I don't regret it for a single second. Can't do it. Gotta just sometimes, what's the point otherwise,
If you don't believe in what you're selling, then you're not going to be able to sell it.
Yeah, that's very admirable, especially when you do have either customers or investors that are coming to you and dangling money in front of you. Hey, go build this, but you know what problem you're trying to solve. You know what your ideal customer looks like. And I think that really speaks volume versus, a lot of other not just in the compliance space. I think this is across the board in SaaS, like companies that are just going to chase every last dollar, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense for the business that they're building. I see it all the time.
I know. And I feel for those folks too. It's just tough. It's always tough.
It is.
It sounds like, though, you're probably not, you're not selling an audit, right? You're selling a GRC platform, and if they want to use it to leverage it for an audit, then sure. But that's not your primary goal with your customers, which I think is a very different playbook than some of the other platforms. They are selling quick audits, and so that's the customer they attract. But you're not selling that. So you're attracting customers that want to use it for GRC and possibly leverage it for an audit if it makes sense, but it's not something necessarily need them to do to get value out of the product.
Exactly. And I think going back to how when we hear from a client that it's their first SOC 2, we often tell them, hey, unless there's a reason that it should be us, I actually think you should go somewhere else. That thread goes through where the folks who are coming to us, they already have an auditor most of the time. One interesting thing that ends up happening is that we become their trusted advisor. And if they want to switch auditors, they come to us. And that's when we actually recommend our audit partners. And they take those recommendations super seriously because we've developed a trust with them, and, we're not selling the audit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And they're not buying an audit. I mean,
We're not.
that's an important distinction, that the why of compliance is not to get an audit. It's to feel more comfortable from a security perspective, theoretically, right? If you're doing it the right way. So it makes sense that your tool wouldn't be geared towards that type of customer.
I'm sure you've all said this at some point before, but it's the whole idea that your piece of paper is the happy byproduct of a sound compliance and security posture, not the outcome of the check marks that you go through in the process.
Definitely, yeah. And I noticed too, I see you're posting a lot about AI recently. I've seen you posting your videos in your product, so I'm going to kind of transition to AI. AI and terrorists, those are like the two words we have to use on this podcast. So if you could put them together, Elliot, that'd be perfect in the show notes. But how are you seeing AI transform GRC teams, and what are GRC teams at mature companies looking for in terms of AI and what a product can offer?
Before I go into my answer, I actually want to ask Troy and Kendra specifically this question. How do you think about AI? And Kendra, especially for you, working in-house, are you feeling wary of it? Are you feeling excited about it?
It's a mixed bag for sure. So the organization that I'm with right now obviously has their foot very deeply into AI, just like from the product that they're building. So by default, the organization loves AI. Me, from like a GRC perspective, having to be the person that's kind of gating or trying to keep everything safe, I'm weary of it. And we had a conversation a few weeks back that we posted on the ISO 42001 certification, where the guests that we had on that show said, they're less concerned about new AI product coming in the door and a little bit more weary about the products that are already in-house that are turning on all these AI features. And that's 100% the case. I think from my side, I'm okay with AI. What I don't care for is when folks are just out there signing up for things willy-nilly and not understanding what they're connecting to and kind of what the implications are. And so I'm trying to take a little bit more of an educational perspective, at least like from my current in-house role, and trying to just make sure that everyone's aware of what those risks are and that we need to make sure that things are vetted, and if enterprise contracts exist, let's go that route. So we're not using our data to train like their LLMs, but it's a love-hate relationship for me when it comes to AI. Mostly love, though, I think. I think I have a very nice relationship with my ChatGPT now. We're coming to an understanding with each other, and it's great.
Troy, do you have any
What about you, Troy?
feelings about it?
I don't know if I could have said it any better. I mean, I'm not obviously running an internal security or compliance team, so I don't have to worry about that. I am cautiously optimistic about it. How about that? I think from an audit perspective, it's definitely going to transform the audit industry like every other industry. I just haven't seen necessarily practical use cases of it, or I think when people think about audits and AI, it's like AI is going to replace the auditor. So like,
But I sent you that thing
I-
from Instagram the other day. It's not happening.
yeah,
Facts.
that made me feel good for 5 seconds. So I appreciate that. And I do think about that a lot. Is AI going to replace me? And am I just a robot? Or is a robot better than me, I guess? And the answer is eventually yes. Like, I know that. So I'm trying to like balance it, right? I don't want to be against it and be afraid of it and be like, oh, it's going to replace me, so I'm just going to say it's really bad. That's not good. So I'm trying to, like Kendra, I'm trying to improve my relationship with it and learn how to balance it. And this is going to air after I announce my company. So while I'm building my company, I'm trying to understand how we can leverage AI from the start, right? So we're not necessarily replacing people, we're just enhancing the work and the people we have right now. It's kind of the focus I'm taking, but again, audits, unless I'm getting your evidence, like I'd have AI grabbing your evidence, reviewing it for me, I'm probably still going to have to review what AI outputs anyways right now. The question is, if I get to a certain point, maybe I'll be using AI instead of hiring auditors. I don't know. I don't know if I'd ever get to that point, but maybe we could do more with less because of it.
To me, you're irreplaceable, Troy, so don't forget that.
That's definitely going to be the clip we post, Elliot.
More time for memes is the real reason, Troy, right? You can have a little less time. Yeah.
Exactly.
most-
More time to not do work. Exactly.
I think memes are work, but yeah. I think so. Thank you both for saying almost exactly what I was hoping to say, which is Kendra said, a love-hate relationship. And Troy, you brought up some of the kind of wariness and fears around it. I think when we talk about AI, it's such a difficult thing as a GRC company to talk about AI for two reasons, right? The people who we are selling to understand the data privacy concerns related to AI and are literally tasked internally with championing good practices in their organizations. That is part of their job. And so you have to be very careful to have good practices and be really open and transparent about those good practices. Otherwise, there's no trust and no one's going to want to use it. The other piece about it is that as a GRC tech company, you have to be innovating hard. I mean, you have to be. There are so many companies that are materializing all the time. And as much as, the three of you, which I love, are supportive of our ethos as a company, a lot of clients just care about the bottom line and want to make sure that they get the most ROI out of the tool. So we can't be naive either. And we got to be, on top of it. And I think in a world of AI that is literally building AI itself, right? Like you use AI to code AI. I mean, it's insane. And in that world, innovation is no longer the moat for a company. I think the platform is the moat, which is super counterintuitive to how things have been for years now, right? Like your moat, always as a tech company, your moat was how innovative you are. But the thing is, innovation is going so fast that even if you do something, someone can copy it in 2 months, 3 months, as soon as they hear about it. So now your platform becomes your moat, and innovation just kind of becomes how you build trust and how you make sure that people know that you exist and are, driving forward. And so that's just kind of like the backdrop. What an interesting backdrop to be in, honestly, as a tech founder right now. Kind of a privilege. Really, really fun. And also really, really hard. So with that as the backdrop, we are very invested in AI. And first, to make sure that we say it, because it's important for us to say it, we have really strong AI data privacy practices. Not a single thing that you put into our platform and that you use for AI is sent back to an LLM. None of it is used to train data or models for other clients. Your data is in your environment, and AI only helps with your information. The other thing is that we have built AI so modularly that you can turn it on and off. Every sub feature of AI can be turned on and off, which means that anything that you don't want it to have access to, it does not. Every feature only accesses the bare minimum information that it needs to execute that one feature. So that means that if you use our AI for the risks module, or actually a really good example, we have a couple clients who only want to use AI for their third-party vendor module because the data is theirs, but it's really their vendor's data. But they don't want to use AI on their controls. Great. We put it off in the controls module, put it on in the vendor's module. And that AI has no access to anything else. Again, to reinforce, even if it did, it wouldn't go anywhere. But I think that's just the first thing to say. Does that make sense? Any questions on just like the privacy side of things?
No, I wish more companies were like that. That modular approach is really helpful because there are a lot of tools that are just coming to mind as you're saying that, where I'm like, gosh, it'd be so nice if we could utilize AI on this and not have to worry about it touching any of this data. So I think that's a really smart approach.
It's also allowed us to have different, technically different models running and the ability in the future to switch out with your model. So let's say some of our larger enterprise clients are creating their own enterprise, LLMs, and we would in the future be able to modularize out our AI and put in their AI if they want to have a totally controlled environment. So we're kind of like future-proofing in that way. And those are the kinds of things where it's like constantly pressed to be, as a GRC tech company, not only at the forefront of innovation, but at the forefront of privacy in that innovation. And that's a high bar, but again, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to meet it. Now talking about our AI, let's get to the fun stuff. I am so proud of the AI that we have in the platform. We break it down into 3 levels, let's say. The first one is embedded AI, where it's right in features. So think of that as a button that you have within a workflow that helps you just like turbo boost a portion of your flow. So as an example, we have AI that suggests mitigating controls for your risks in your risk register. That's a simple example. We have AI that recommends evidence from your evidence center against new controls or existing controls that you have in the platform. So now all of a sudden you're getting a new audit request list in. You can go in and just say, great, what do I already have that checks off, all these boxes? So that's just like what we think of as our embedded AI. We have a lot of, maybe 15, 20 embedded AI tools right now. And clients just get so used to them, they don't even want to go back to anything else, which is great. The next one is conversational AI, which is a little more interesting. It's like policy Q&A. So you can ask questions about your policies. It's a bit more like open, prompt, able. The third one, big buzzword now, coming at you from me.
Tariffs.
Agentic AI. Agentic.
It's all about
AI. I'm curious how you define this and what it does.
You're going to hear all about agentic AI for the next years to come. You're hearing, I don't know if you guys like really dug into agentic, but basically it's AI that you can enable to essentially take autonomous sort of decisions and actions on your behalf. And that starts to get a little crazy. And you got to build it the right way from a privacy perspective. You've got to limit it in scope so that it doesn't hallucinate too much. You've got to make sure that the prompts are so well tested that you're not getting errors or, sort of the wrong outputs. But after you do all of that, what you have is these AI agents that you can enable. And ideally they're custom agentic, like they are in our platform, to do very specific work for you so that you don't have to do it in as much depth. So an example of what we've already released, we have AI agents that review the answer to your vendor's questionnaire responses. So that means when you send out, a security questionnaire to your vendors and they respond back, we all know a lot of those are multiple choice questions, but you're forced to kind of go through them anyway. Some tools offer like flag if the answer is this, and that's very, like if A or B, flag it, whatever, that's fine. But you want to be asking questions that are deeper. Like you want to be saying, hey, what is your deletion policy for customer data? And you want to flag as a risk if their policy is that they only delete customer data if you ask them. But there's no like multiple choice, very blanket or very black and white, response that's going to get you to that. So instead, you can actually tell AI, hey, when you're creating the question, you actually say, hey, this is what I care about. And now the second the vendor submits their response, AI reviews all the responses and messages you if there's any risks. You can still go and look at it, no problem. If you think that those are real risks, you can also say, hey, create a risk on this one, on this one, on this one, create a task on this one. And it'll go through and do that. Hopefully that's clear, kind of the value that could provide to overstretched mid-market teams.
So how do you convince them to trust it though? Because you kind of mentioned trusts, right? The mode is innovation. It's building that trust. So if I'm trusting it to review, because I'm just thinking this because I'm an auditor, so I check everything, right? If I'm relying on your AI, go through those responses and flag the ones that it thinks it should flag, do I just trust that all the other ones are good? Is that what you're... I feel like as a GRC professional, it's hard to get over that, right? Like the trust is just, I don't trust anything. I always have, does that kind of make sense when I'm asking? Like, how do you get them to trust it, or are they just blindly trusting it?
They don't trust it for the first couple months, and I encourage them not to. I think it's about, we're not trying to say, hey, this is coming here to replace all of this work for you. We're saying, hey, you're in control. And I think that's where the custom agentic AI, that word custom is so important. We're not setting the criteria. They are. And it's in their front end. They can actually change the criteria themselves. They can run tests if they want to. So if they want to sit there and tweak the criteria and do 1,000 questionnaires through and tweak and test, they can do that. And because they can do that, I think they're trusting it almost like they would trust, any AI output that they would get on their own terms, right? Because they're in control the whole time. They're telling the agent exactly what to do. And then, again, I think healthy distrust is kind of good. First couple months, review it all. If you want, keep reviewing it. I mean, honestly, that's not the problem. But at least you get some things kind of surfaced for you, right? Like, we've all been there. It's like, it's late on a Thursday evening. Kind of want to wrap up for the week. You're going through those questionnaire responses. If you want to think of it as just a helping hand, think of it as a helping hand. If you want to fully trust and outsource it, that's your prerogative. We are not here to be like, we're automating compliance end-to-end 365. No, that's not what we're doing. We're just finding ways to help relieve a little bit of that manual burden.
I mean, at the same time, it's really no different than any time I've hired a new analyst or GRC person on my team. Yeah, you want to trust them through the interview process. You get them on board. You got to give them a few months to see what they can really do. To me, it's kind of similar to that in terms of, I don't know, training a toddler. What kind of like your internal standard is, you're just using a machine to kind of help automate that in the future based off of learnings, right? So person, AI, whatever, it's all the same.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. No, go ahead, Rich.
I'm going to use that line. I was just going to say, Kendra, I'm going to use that line just so
feel great.
Oh,
Never
Feel great.
Never.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's why you were saying earlier too, like your customers have to, I guess, care about compliance and the why, right? Because the ones that don't want to do that, they do just want to click a button and whatever the AI tells me, I'm just going to trust because I don't care about it anyways. And to be honest, maybe AI probably helps them because it does better than they would have done, because the AI probably cares more in that case about doing a better job, if you think about it. So I actually, as I'm thinking out loud here, I think see, it's interesting, right? Because now, maybe I could just use AI instead of actually hiring dedicated people to do this. Oh, I trust the AI, it's good. See, that's what ends up, do you see how that could morph into that type of thinking? Oh, I have this company, we're scaling, we're growing. Okay, cool. We have this AI that does our GRC. We don't need to hire somebody. We have AI. I think that's why people fear it, right? That's probably not a good answer, right? Like just to leverage AI and not use it. But the people that are saying that probably don't know what goes into GRC actually, right? Or whatever task they're trying to do, they don't know what actually goes into it because they never actually did it.
This is such an important conversation. I want to take a moment on this specific piece around replacing FTEs or, I think that the goal for at least companies like ours is that you're freeing up the time for smart people to stop email chasing control owners or email chasing vendors and focus on strategic risk reduction. Because I think right now what's happening is that there are so many FTEs who did not sign up to GRC to manually, review forms or whatever the heck they're doing, like screenshot evidence, right? Is that the best use of their capacity? Or if maybe we had a little bit more time in the day to think strategically about risk reduction, is that a better use of their time? And so maybe, Troy, you're hiring someone now, not, let's just use the example, like maybe you're not hiring the most junior person to review, the evidence screenshot of every one of your clients, but maybe you're hiring someone, either them and you're training them up, or someone a little bit more senior to think about the next level of question or the nuance. And don't you think companies will be more secure if people have that time? I genuinely believe that.
But my 8-year-old son will have a hard time finding an entry-level job.
See,
I
that's
think
also, I kind of jumped, but that's
bar-
also something I think about. Like,
But
entry
will they
level's
want-
tough now,
Now I feel like we kind of talked about it on our last, or maybe I talked about it with somebody else. I can't remember. We did talk about it our last episode. Yeah. Last Friday we did talk about it, but is GRC and security, are there really entry-level roles for people in this space? And is AI going to make it so you don't really need entry-level roles in this
Or will
space?
entry-level roles just change? It's
Yeah.
like the same thing that happened when automation happened. If people are no longer filling in records by hand, that used to be the entry-level job. Then the entry-level job was something else.
True. I really wish I would have paid more attention to this Instagram reel or video I was just watching before this. I didn't know that it was going to be something I would ever reference, but there was a conversation that was happening with a teacher on a talk show, and basically they were like, so, how do you get around, or like, how are you basically watching your students for using things like ChatGPT to do their homework? And her response was basically, I really don't. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what we end up having to do is shift like how we used to do things, where, hey, you'd give a student an essay and they'd go home and they'd write that and then they would come back with it. Okay, cool. Like maybe we're still doing that. And yeah, they go home and they use ChatGPT to spit out this long-winded answer. So when they get back into the classroom, like, how can we help them elevate, right? If the foundation is now, okay, here's what an AI can do for us, how do we elevate the person past that? Cool, let AI do that basic level of work. But now you come back into the classroom and you find, like a rebuttal or, something that doesn't make sense in this, and basically use your critical thinking to go past that. And so, yeah, like to your point, I think entry-level jobs are going to have to adapt and evolve, and that fundamental understanding of what AI is capable of is like, that's the starting ground now. That's learning your ABCs. So it's just going to adapt. Gosh, I wish I would have paid more attention to that video.
What you did. It was a very eloquent explanation of what the video.
That was so much better than what I said.
It was great. I fully understood them.
I got it made sense. I know what you're saying. You have to reimagine how writing an essay should be done now, so to speak.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is the skills you can gain?
Exactly.
But the question becomes, is there skill? Well, we cheated anyways. We were using something else. It wasn't ChatGPT. Whatever we did to get our essays, Wikipedia,
it was
whatever. We could, right?
Yeah.
I
read a
think
book
what
in
ends up-
my
I think the deeper discussion, though, is, I don't want to say it like this because I think this is, writing an essay is a waste of time. And that's what the future would be. Like, we don't need to write essays. It was a waste of time anyways. You don't need to do that. We don't need audits. SOC 2 is a waste of time, right? So that's why I hesitate to say it, because I know that that's like how the story ends. I just don't know what the story looks like at the end. But essays become a waste of time. They don't matter. That has to be how the story ends, especially if teachers are. Because the people that'll be teaching people to write essays would have never gained the skill to write the essay. They would have been using it eventually. Do you see? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
How we kind of
it just becomes a waste of time and pretends like it doesn't even exist. And when I'm 80 years old, I tell my grandkids, I had to actually write essays by hand and do this. And they're like, what? What's an essay? Like, that's
walking the pill both ways.
right? Well, it's a SOC too. What do you mean you guys did an audit with looking at screenshots? Like, that's how this story ends. I hope it ends after I retire, but that's another story.
Or we all write essays all the time for joy because AI is doing our work. I mean, no,
That's a positive outlook. I don't think
I really don't know. And I'm actually not that positive about it. Like, in the sense that I think that, that's what I'm saying. It's so hard to balance all these different forces because there's the practicality of if we don't adopt it. I don't mean we as a company. I mean, we as human beings. If we don't adopt it, it's going to move right by us. It's not waiting for us. So that's one thing. And the next thing is that, okay, so how do you find sanity in this, world where this is happening? I think all we can do is keep the touchstones that we know to be real and valuable. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch us play out as society, not even as, GRC practitioners and tech founders and auditors. I think there's a lot there. I'm going to give one actually real pertinent example of almost like the essay thing. In the platform, I was talking about the embedded AI. There's this feature that it's our risk treatment plan drafting, and it'll basically review your risk record and only that one. So you can kind of, again, turn it on or off as you want to. And it will draft a risk treatment plan for you. And it uses best practices and it lays out, all the steps that you can do to address a risk. And I look at that feature and I get scared about it. Like, look, people need to be customizing these plans. They need to be looking at that and really reading it. And so I've been watching usage of this tool. Like, I've been literally watching it. I've been asking our clients who use it, what do you do? Do you just drop this and walk away? And I found something interesting and really encouraging. And they say that for low risks, they kind of do. They kind of draft the risk treatment plan, make sure it makes sense, move on. But that for high risks, especially high risks that are assigned to risk owners, where the risk owner has to do the first pass at the treatment plan, they said that the risk owners are responding more because they feel like they don't have to start from zero. Like, they get something and then they tailor it to their business. And that made me so proud and so happy that we've delivered them something that actually enables them to deal with their risks better than before. Of course, the trade-off is their low risks are getting dealt with worse than before. I don't know. But that's the thing. Like, how do you interpret that? What is that good? Is that bad? I think the jury's out.
Well, they don't care about their low risks anyway, so it doesn't matter. The essay doesn't matter. That's how I view that, right? The low risks, whatever. We don't need to treat those anyways. We should just be accepting those. So who cares? But they're not wasting their time on those that they would have been before, so they can focus more on the higher risk ones. That's where I see the value, right? Whereas they might have been spending a lot of time on those low risk ones, trying to come up with risk remediation plans or mitigation plans, and then they weren't able to focus on the high risk ones. Though you probably would start with your high risk ones first, so let's just pretend they didn't, and this person started with their low risk ones first. But you kind of get what I'm getting. It is a benefit there. So I think that example, you are correct. I think as long as the people are leveraging AI as a tool and not as a solution, I guess. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but then I think it actually is great. It doesn't replace, it enhances, but I still think in the future it will replace. That's just how the story ends. I just don't see it any other way. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna keep sending you things I find on Instagram to try and keep your spirits up.
I just think we are living in times where things have been replaced, but we forget that they've been replaced. I can't think of good examples right now, but textbooks. My kids don't have textbooks anymore. So think about the text. I mean, I'm just throwing out an example. Like, my son does not have a textbook, right? I mean, AI will definitely replace things. I just don't know what it will replace fully.
We wonder why children don't have muscle mass anymore. They're not lugging around big books.
But my son does read a lot still. He actually got this trivia question right yesterday at school. He's 8 years old. And they asked him who won the first World Series ever played, which, if you know anything about baseball, the World Series was probably played in like late 1800s. I don't even know. He got it right. It was the Pittsburgh Pirates. Well, I live in Pittsburgh. Versus the Boston Americans. But he knew that they were called the Americans and not the Reds. I was like, how'd you know that? He's like, I read it in a book. I was like, proud dad moment. I'm doing something right.
That's awesome.
That is, yeah.
So
I don't know. I think at the end of the day, we almost have to think of these AI tools as additional resources. Like, I have a long list of things that I kind of have categorized or itemized as being more junior, I guess, tasks that suck up a lot of my day. And now I'm having to choose between, okay, do I seek to hire like a more junior associate to help me with these things? Or do I try and use all these incredible tools that are available out there in the world, like AI, to try and automate some of this away and use that as a resource? That's kind of what it comes down to for me. But
There was an interview with Satya Nadella, obviously the Microsoft CEO, a few weeks ago or maybe last month, where he said, AI is coming for SaaS. SaaS is dead. So all you SaaS companies out there, like, AI is replacing you. So I guess, Troy, I really understand. I think it's good. If it comes for one, it's going to come for all. And I think that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think we can do anything about it. I think we just kind of have to figure out, how we move with it or something.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
not
otherwise it's
actually
just gonna
really
pass
afraid
us
of it.
by.
I'm not really afraid of it replacing me. I'm just afraid of what the replacement is. But I'll accept my fate. I'll accept my defeat to technology, and I'm just trying to delay it a little bit. Let it be my kids' problems, not mine. So
Have you seen those like Tesla humanoid robots? They're literally going to replace us physically.
I like that title,
Not
Elliot.
muscle mass. We're going to be just like laying on the couch and it's just going to be giving us everything. We're not going to have to even walk over anymore. Crazy.
Well, someone
and I
was
got
saying
Wally.
you need
Yeah,
to.
Wally.
I need to rewatch the Jetsons. You guys know that cartoon? It was in 1962, but it was actually taking place 100 years later in 2062. So I need to rewatch that and see how much of that is actually already happened, because I think that'll be a good inclination on where we're going with AI.
Oi, oi, oi. Now that we've referenced the Jetsons, I think it's time to get out of here.
It was a great conversation. Really appreciate
Yes,
that.
thank you so much for doing the Lord's work when it comes to compliance. I feel like there's so much that's broken with this industry, and I love the approach that your company is taking. So thank you.
Compliance with a
Keep
Y.
going.
I like it.
Compliance
Thank
with a Y.
Compliance.
I hope
think
you
you
use that as a
found a-
quote on your website now.
I think you
Yeah,
found
excellent.
a sponsor, so Kendra will sponsor your companies for free.
Perfect.
It's
What I can't close, one thing I can't close out without saying your theme song is awesome. Comply or Die. That was unreal. The fact that is your theme song. I listened to it like 10 times the first time to make sure that I heard it
Amazing.
correct.
So
I mean, it's perfect.
TJ
ending
might be
because-
afraid of AI,
Yes, AI
but that
made
was
it.
AI.
See how good it
That
was?
was awesome. It was so awesome. That was my last word. Comply or die. Thanks, everyone.
All right, that's it. We'll see you next episode. Maybe. Bye.
Never.
Thank you for listening to GRC Uncensored, the podcast, where Troy and Kendra know their shit, and our producer just talks shit. To learn more about GRC, go to grcuncensored.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our community on Reddit. Viewpoints expressed during the show do not reflect the brands, employers, or companies of our hosts, guests, or sponsors.